Can we do a little quickie on immunity versus flipping?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Oh my gosh. Free Press welcomes back Tracy Green. I'm having so much fun. Okay. Again,
Well, Heidi, I'm glad that you're willing to, you become a legal nerd and, you
I've
and you
always been a
actually
nerd.
enjoy learning all these things.
I've always been a nerd, and we met because we're both docu-nerds. We met snooping around FEC documents, and boy, was that fun. But I will say that, again, we are living in a time when everybody has an opinion on everything, and that's great because we're meeting a lot of great citizen activists. We're meeting some of the superstars and rock stars in the media world who've jumped the barricades over corporate-controlled media to actually get truth out. And there's a lot of... I am much more hopeful than I've ever been because I watched media not do its job leading up to the election and then not do its job after the election. And when I resigned from corporate-controlled media some years ago, there weren't any investigative teams left. They dismantled them. They were too much of a liability. So the media has been playing catch-up, and now they're catching up. But there's still so many things that get stuck in the weeds, and one of the things that's topical right now is immunity flipping, immunity versus flipping. Can you give us some clarity on that? Because we don't know squat about it, truthfully. So, how these grand juries work, and just try to kind of explain that for people.
Sure. There's a couple different layers. So let's just we're going to use the Cohen case as an example, and just because a lot of people, people that watch you know about it.
Yeah.
So what would have happened in March or April of 2018 is that the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York issued a grand jury subpoena to American media, for example. And they issue a subpoena for documents. Well, the documents, corporations don't have Fifth Amendment rights.
Okay.
So they're not a person for every, they can give unlimited campaign donations, but they don't have Fifth Amendment rights.
I'm just shutting the window. Hold that.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's okay. I didn't know if that was too noisy.
So you get that, and then let's say that they then decide the grand jury wants to subpoena someone like Mr. Pecker or Allen Weisselberg.
Sorry. As a screenwriter, you couldn't even make this shit up. Okay, so here we go. Well, all right. Back to...
Exactly. So they issue a subpoena and same thing, let's say they issue a subpoena for records to the Trump Organization, any and all documents referring to essential consultants, to the payment, to Michael Cohen. They can produce the documents, and usually when you just produce documents, what happens is you just turn them over to an FBI agent. Someone signs a verification that those are all the records, and you don't have a custodian of record. But when you want a nice, live, warm body to come in and talk about it, such as Allen Weisselberg or David Pecker or the other Howard, I can't remember his last name. There was another media person over at American Media. When you want that person to come in, they're going to contact a lawyer and they're going to ask them, they're going to say, well, we don't believe that our client did anything wrong, but because obviously you're investigating some other people, I'm going to advise my client to take the Fifth Amendment and not testify.
Okay.
So then at that point, the U.S. Attorney's Office is going to take it up the food chain and say, this person isn't a target, or this isn't someone who we think there might be some fringes of criminality. They might have helped someone, but they weren't the moving forces. So we think it's in public interest it's in our public interest to get their testimony. It's really what we'd like to do here. So we want to give them immunity to testify before the grand jury.
Right.
And at that point, if you're Mr. Weisselberg's attorney or Mr. Pecker's attorney, then the assistant U.S. attorney calls your attorney and says, no, they can come on in. We're giving them immunity about this. Now, this doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all, that they can come in and ask about everything else.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
It's not technically flipping. I mean, flipping would be you're part of something that's gone on and you're going to go in and be debriefed, not in front of a grand jury, but just with FBI agents. So then when they either go into the grand jury with this, immunity, just limited immunity to testify, all they'll talk about is what's the subject matter of that case. Or if they get interviewed, if there was something obviously criminal that's related, where they could ask about it.
Right.
It does not give them any license to go in and say, well, can you tell us, Mr. Weisselberg, about the loans and Russian investments? That would not, if his lawyer were present.
That's what we hope here on the layperson side of the street. We hope all that's going on, but the reality is it sounds very narrow.
Right, and kind of going back, we were talking, when I talked to you before about the players, one of the things that happens is that the lawyers communicate with each other.
Yes.
Weisselberg will have his own separate attorney, and he or she will they might contact the Trump campaign attorney. They will contact Michael Cohen's attorney. They might contact the other American media's attorney. And someone will know what's going to be said. And because you want to be educated about what's happening. And so you want to see what's going to occur. And then at that point, they'll make the decision. They'll come in. They'll say, here's what we're going to do. So I don't think this was any surprise to Donald Trump that Weisselberg had testified before the grand jury. No one would have told him specifically what was said, but his own lawyer would have known. His own lawyer might have been able to share it with some others. They probably wouldn't have shared it with Michael Cohen's attorney, but they'd probably share it with counsel for the Trump organization. So that's that limited, narrow space. And that's the same thing that happened with Pecker. And so now they might have asked him about other, I would say with respect to I'll just call it American media. So you don't turn into
I'm so sorry. I was trying to find a moment to tell our viewers that Allen Weisselberg is the CFO of the Trump organization, in case they didn't know, but I couldn't stop being immature and giggling. Yes.
And you
can say Pecker. I've got it now.
And there's another executive that did sign some documents, but we haven't heard anything about that.
Right.
So I even saw the New Yorker, which usually doesn't exaggerate too much. I even saw the New Yorker making it sound like, well, if Weisselberg has flipped.
Right.
And so now Michael Cohen has now flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That will mean he's going to go in and he will cooperate fully. And it isn't just going to be about Stormy Daniels and Essential Consultants, in part because he had all these other tax issues and all these other problems. It's going to be about everything that he knows. If he was engaged in any other crime, any other offenses, or anything like that, now's the time for him to talk about it. And so that may be where all that lies. So now with that, then people will be concerned about it. I'd say, or people might see that if Trump has or Cohen has information, they can expect that it will go beyond the FEC violations, and it might go to some of the other things they have. And he can also cooperate in other state administrative and try to get credit for that. One of his goals right now, his lawyer's goal, is to try to minimize the amount of time he's going to serve in federal prison. So I think I heard somewhere, I don't know, that another organization called him, I don't know if it was in New York, if it was state prosecution in New York or something, and he supposedly called them back right away.
Yeah. Right.
So he's going to cooperate fully and completely. And part of that, it's almost like going down a rabbit hole. You don't just answer the question that's posed to you. You say, well, you're right, but you know what, let me tell you about this. And it also went that way. And here's what we did. And he's going to give that information. And some of the stuff may be old, may be barred by statute of limitations. Some of it may be there is no other pending criminal case. And I think in Southern District of New York, I think they're going to be careful. I don't think they're going to want to look like they're just going to use it. So I think they will try to tie it to pending investigation. If it relates to a tax fraud, then they might ask about something else. So that's the real difference. So those other limited immunity, because I wouldn't, I have testified before the grand jury one time, and it was when another lawyer was at issue, not me. But I did have to assert some attorney-client privilege and other things like that. So, but there are plenty of times, because people use these terms like target or witness or subject, but anyone who's a witness, if you were a witness to a crime, you could be guilty of, maybe it's called misprision of a felony, of not telling other people that something else was going wrong. So I mean, that, my gosh, the law books. I mean, it's like this. It's, there's so many laws, and the judgment could be. So, if a lawyer is representing someone carefully, they're going to say, "I'm not going to testify unless I get immunity," and that's what's going on with Roger Stone. I can't remember his name. His last name Miller.
Andrew Miller.
Yeah, Andrew Miller.
Let's pause for 1 second, because basically late breaking news last night from CNN was that Andrew Miller had gotten immunity by the feds. By the morning, I woke up to a bunch of messages saying, hey, this link is showing something else. It's showing that he's resisting, the subpoena. And oddly enough, CNN, rather than issuing a correction, just when you hit that link that said he was offered immunity, it went to a entirely different story, or a story that was parallel. And it wasn't until many hours later that they did a tiny little correction and didn't even say what really happened. They just said somehow there was some kind of screw up. I don't know what that was about, but it certainly does complicate and confuse things. But essentially, maybe somebody just jumped the gun on it. But what is happening now? Let's just frame it. We weren't going to talk about Roger Stone yet, but we won't talk about him so much. But let's just get like a one little legal intel on what it would mean for some of the guys and the women who are being called in to testify.
This just sort of goes into how do you lead up to someone maybe getting some immunity for grand jury testimony.
There you go.
So first step would be, I'm not coming to testify. I believe there's some Fifth Amendment issues. I would want to assert my Fifth Amendment issue. And if that's the case, they don't bring you to come in and do it. You just write a letter or tell the lawyers. So he's resisting. And who knows, maybe they asked for documents or asked for other things. So he's resisting. So then it's a process. And so perhaps maybe someone got some bad reporting and said that probably if he was, maybe I've done this where I've sent a letter saying my client won't come, but if you give us immunity in terms of coming and testifying, some of the people who follow you are pretty young. They may have not been around during the Linda Tripp, Monica Lewinsky, Clinton time, but Linda Tripp.
That's a blast from the past. I never want to relive.
But Linda Tripp got immunity, grand jury immunity, because she had taped. In some states, in California, we can't tape people. We can't tape phone calls. It's two-party consent here in California. I think Linda Tripp taped Monica Lewinsky in a phone call in Maryland, and so then technically that was a criminal offense. And so, in order to get Linda Tripp to come and testify, she received immunity.
Okay, so
she received immunity. So it's not that uncommon, and she didn't know anything else, but it lets people the public interest is that this person isn't the main one we're at. We really want to get a full and complete story. And if they will be more forthcoming if they don't think that they're going to be prosecuted. And so it's up to the prosecutors have a lot of discretion on who to give it to. They tend to give it to lower level players. In most cases they don't give it. But in high profile cases, you'll see it a lot more often. And also because when you're a lawyer on those high-profile cases, then you've really got to nail it down. Most of the time, it's maybe I'll have what I would call a general person's agreement. They'll say, Tracy, don't worry, your client, we're not after them. And we know that there's a few sketchy things. They'll come in. We have no interest in prosecuting your client. And you just bring them in trusting. In a case like this, you can't do it. You've got to really... There's just too much at stake, and so I think the lawyers are going to do that, and we'll see whatever's happening with respect to any of the witnesses relating to Roger Stone or the like. Okay. So that'll just be another wait and see.
Beautiful. That's what I needed from you. So Cohen, flipping, and those on the fringes of criminality, immunity. Okay.
But did you see the quote? And I didn't hear it. That Roger Stone had made a comment that he thought Don Jr. was going to be indicted for lying to the FBI.
Oh yeah, that guy will do anything for FaceTime. We're going to get to Roger Stone because anything. They brought 8 different associates of his in already, so something's going to give there, and I look forward to that. So that'll be among the next subjects we queue up. But
that's right. And of course, Roger Stone's saying, "Oh, look over there. Look at Don Jr."
You know what? As somebody who's watched his shenanigans, for the better part of 40 years, that is a day that I can say, as much as I pray for everybody, that's going to be a day that there will be some rejoicing.
We'll see what happens there as well. So it's Roger Stone. He's an interesting character. He was someone who last year said he expected to be indicted.
Yeah.
And so
maybe he's looking forward to doing a little time. I don't know. He a kook. On that happy note, I'm looking so forward to our next one, and thank you so much for that immunity versus flipping and the fringes of criminality splainer. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.